All right, a very good morning to you. It's good to see you this Thursday morning. It's actually 18th day of August 2022 and it's back to school. And of course, amidst all the confusion as far as when students resume school, they were supposed to go back on Monday. And then, of course, that was pushed to Thursday. And here we are. And so many parents are not happy about all that is happening in the education sector, especially now with all the confusion that, of course, this has been brought about by the fact that we had elections. So many parents are like, you know what, if this go back home and then come back to school and go back home will affect so many students in one way or the other. But again, the education CS, that is Professor George Magoha, maintains that in the event that, again, the Supreme Court sort of orders for a repeat of the elections, then the school calendar will not be affected. So how is that the case? Well, not to worry, because at the end of the day, the CS said we'll have everything in order, and of course we will make sure that then the classes will not be affected. Those in boarding school will not come back home, from school. They will again still stay in school. We will ensure that their security again is upheld. But then some parents are a bit concerned about the security of their learners. It's a lot, all right? But take a look at what the CS said as far as the resumption of education calendar.
The portal is open. It was open on the 15th. It's supposed to go on until the 30th. Children are coming back tomorrow. There's total peace and tranquility. My own relatives are traveling from all over the country to go to where they are going. There's absolute security. You see chiefs and policemen all over. If there's an election somewhere, and it will take a day, we are not going to ask our children in boarding schools to go home again. It is far much wiser to ensure that the children who are in boarding school remain in boarding school and do other things and avoid the classrooms where the voting will be taking place. We shall also avoid working with IEBC, avoid them creating tallying centers where children perhaps are going to be using. For example, if a tallying center is supposed to be in a high school, we want to persuade them perhaps to shift the tallying center to another institution of higher learning, like a university, so that the children don't lose any more time.
All right, that is Professor George Magoha again talking about the, of course, the resumption of learning in schools and saying, you know what, they will not be, again, affected in one way or the other. But to get the accurate feel of what is on the ground, we have our very own Kevin Mutai, who is in Mombasa, joining us this morning. Good morning, Kevin. It's good to see you today. What is happening on the ground? I can see you are in a school. So are there learners in school yet, or they're yet to resume?
Well, glad to hear from you, Winnie. Indeed, it's a very sunny morning here in Mombasa. And as you said, the school calendar has suffered a blow after disruptions of several phenomenal. First, to begin with, in 2020, after the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic that forced the Ministry of Education to suspend or rather close schools to ensure that the government manages or rather contains the spread of the virus. And again, this follows again the general election that also led the government to suspend learning because the learning institutions had to be used for tallying and voting respectively. And what we are witnessing across the county is the operations are resuming and learners are coming back to school. But to get the feeling of how the situation is on the ground, let's just quickly engage the teachers and of course also speak to some few parents to tell us exactly how is the situation, especially regarding the school calendar. Start by introducing yourself.
My name is John Kumbo. I'm the director of the Paramount Education Center, Mombasa, and we have resumed learning today after double stoppage by the CS because of elections. And we all know that it has not been very easy in the education sector right from 2020 when COVID-19 started. we have had issues that I don't know how we will handle this, but it is very difficult for us to finish the syllabus in good time and present particularly the classes that are doing national exams, that is grade 6 and standard 8 towards the end of November. We have a very short period of time, knowing very well that we started off our learning basically in May because we opened the schools towards the end of April, and now in November the exams will be ready. We did not expect this kind of break that's longer than even the normal holiday when schools do close. This abrupt closure of schools by the ministry is a complete interference of the education sector, and we wish that proper consultations had been made by those on the ground who are manning the children. We would have given our word so that learning continues undisturbed. We are preparing the candidates. We are serious about CBC, which is actually new to everybody, and we want to make sure it is a success. This interference will definitely affect the learners, and already the parents are feeling the heat. When you come up one morning and say, with effect from tomorrow, we do not have schools. I have a child in Lodwar, a parent has another one, has a child in Busia, and you live in Mombasa. That causes panic.
Mombasa is one of the regions that are yet again to go back to the polls, especially regarding the postponement of the gubernatorial race. How do you think this is going to go along, especially again when the term, I understand, is about 2 weeks again before the learners go back home for the close of another term?
This again, I do not know what we are actually living in total darkness, because you do not know what the ministry will say, because just like it was the people in Mombasa and County and Kakamega County, they also deserve to be given time when the campaigns are on. That interferes with learning, the loudspeakers, the what have you, and also they are saying if others were given time a holiday to go and vote during the August 9th, why can't they be given a holiday when they have this by-election coming affecting these two counties? And if that happens, definitely again, we are sure we are going to be affected. And given we will do the same exam with those who are not affected, this is tricky to us.
Okay, thank you so much. Winnie, I think let me just also have one.
To the same, but very quickly, let's cross over to Murang'a, where we have our very own Martin Mwangi. Good to see you this morning, Martin Mwaura, sorry, not Martin Mwangi, Martin Mwaura, who's again, I can see on the streets. What exactly is happening? It's a bit quieter as opposed to what we usually see when it's back to school.
Yes, thank you very much. As you have rightly said, I'm at the streets of Murang'a town, just near the Matatu terminus, and it's a beehive of activities on the other school here in Murang'a County. But it's also some sort of uncertainty from the parents here, most of the parents who have kids in the other parts of the country. I've managed to speak to some of the parents who are taking their kids to school in parts of Western and Nyanza, and they are saying they are unsure of the safety of their kids. But here I'm joined by two parents who have kids at primary and secondary level. I just want to talk to them. So, are they skeptical, or are they sure, or are they certain that the safety of their kids will be guaranteed during this time, as the climate for the polls is still on the air? Welcome to NTV. I'll start by you. I want you to start by introducing yourself and tell us, as a parent, what do you feel about the safety of your kid as they report back to school today?
My name is Juliet Mogo from Murang'a County. I'm here to say that we are happy that the kids are back to school. They have resumed their normal studies after the long break. We are, however, skeptical about their safety in the process where there have been held elections. We hope the government will do everything possible to make sure that our kids are safe, and they shall becoming home back safely, and they shall be able to go back to their normal learning lessons.
It's also the matter of school fees. Maybe as a parent, also the hard economic times and the short terms, there's so many breaks. What is your general feeling about that?
Oh, as a parent, even at home, the cost of living has been high. And we also feel for the principals and the head teachers who are in school. But we hope that will not affect so much the school fees, since it's also hard on us as parents. We also feel for the principals because the cost of living has been high. But we hope the government will intervene and they'll give them subsidies that will be able to cater for the expenses for the children. Thank you.
Before I let you go, one last question. What is your general overview about the whole Ministry of Education being led by Magoha? Do you think like the minister has been flip-flopping on so many issues? We have uncertainty over CBC because you had the Kenya Kwanza saying they'll scrap it off. Maybe what is your general?
Oh, as a parent, I'm a CBC parent. Improvement.
Oh no, we seem to have a bit, of a signal issue with our very own Martin Mwangi, who is in Murang'a. But of course, one of those things that comes out is the safety of the learners in schools, and of course, what parents feel, because there's that aspect of traveling. Again, for example, in this case, from Murang'a all the way to Kisumu or to Kakamega, and of course, we all understand that in Kakamega, of course, they'll be going again back to the polls again to elect a governor. So, what will happen exactly to that? But of course, we also have like other 4 constituencies again, which will be sort of affected, by the polls. But let me bring in my guest, Dr. Evelyn Jepkemei, who is an education expert. It's so good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for sparing time for us. And given what the parents are saying together with the teachers, what do you make of that?
I think the first thing is for all of us to understand that education happens in a context, and the context is society. So education will always reflect what is going on within the society. And our society right now is, everybody is like almost on the edge. Although I want to say that I really want to applaud Kenyans. I think this election has been carried out in a very mature way.
Absolutely.
And we haven't seen, the crazy things that we've seen in the past. So I understand why parents would be concerned a little bit about the security of their children. But at the same time, I think I'm really heartened to see that this is how many days after election and we are back to work. So I think that is, there are challenges, but I think let's start from the good side of things.
Right.
One is that it's possible for children to go back to school, and that there are still pockets in the country where election will need to happen. But if we go by what we have seen so far, from my own point of view, even the issues around election that are there right now have nothing to do with the ordinary mwananchi. These are issues about people who are in power, politicians, and unfortunately that is a political context that we are working in, and obviously education is a political process as well. You cannot remove politics from education because it's about power and resources.
Yes.
But one thing that I wanted to mention is that the Ministry of Education has the responsibility to communicate to the stakeholders, to parents, to head teachers. When schools broke for this short period, the notice came a day before it was to be implemented, and many of our secondary schools, which are boarding schools, had resources. They had already purchased food, cabbages and things like that, things that are perishable.
Yeah.
Those would go to waste because schools are not in the business of selling food. So, I'm sure if I was a principal, I would have no idea where to take those perishables. And so I would like to urge that, in this period where you have uncertainty and disruption, just like in any other organization, when you are facing challenges like we are facing of disruption and of uncertainty and things like that, communication is important. Everybody needs to be on the same page with regards to what needs to happen.
All right.
The principals were taken by surprise, parents were taken by surprise, and I think that's not a very nice thing.
And someone was debating and saying, but what else could have the CS done? And again, I know on this other end, there's some people who say, I mean, but we all knew come August, of course, elections would have to happen. So, of course, the education ministry should have, you know, sort of like wajipange, mapema, so that by the time we're getting to August, we all know this is when schools closed, children need to go home, and then this is when we resume. So then again, balancing act.
I don't like the idea of last minute things, you know. We're dealing with human beings. They have they have emotions, you know. If I know, for example, that I plan my week or I plan my day, and I know that at 11 o'clock I need to be doing ABCD. When something happens, I need extra energy to be able to counter, to be able to adapt to that new situation. We have been adapting since 2020. But we knew that elections were to happen on the 9th of August. And we knew that most of the primary schools would be polling stations. Why did we not, ahead of time, say that schools would close? And in fact, the day that schools closed, it was on a Thursday. There was not going to be any difference if those schools closed on Friday, as it had been planned. To bring it one day earlier just caused a disruption that was unnecessary, because that is a difference of 24 hours. And so, you know, it presents a picture of people who don't plan. You know, it's like we are happening on things. But I think I also want to mention that the disruption is not just about the timing, it is also about the many things. There are kids whose livelihood depends on school, where they get that 1 meal in school under the school feeding program. So sending them home within a very short time like that means that they are not able to get that meal, that 1 meal. I think I had parents even talking about budget ya hao watoto tumepeleka kwa shule. Sasa mnaturudishia na mturudishii pesa, watakula nini?
And we still have to pay the same amount.
And by the way, it is very easy for people to say, you know, parents are pushing their kids to school. But poverty is a real thing in this country, and many families are really struggling to put food on the table. So when a child goes to school, that is relief for the parents, because at least when they are in school, they get, you know, they are able to get the 3 meals in a day. So that's a really important point to focus on. The other thing has to do with, and this really we need to think about it a little bit more seriously. The psychosocial well-being of these kids. When you are being thrown left, right, and center. Schools will close in September. Then schools close in August, even though it was a half-term break. That young mind, kids love stability. But the way things are, we are subject to disruptions. And I'm not necessarily blaming anybody for the disruptions, because they were necessary. However, we need to plan for them ahead of time. But beyond that, we also need to do a lot of counseling to these kids, because they are panicking about, you can even tell from they're panicking, you know, because the syllabus, we will not be able to complete the syllabus, and so, you know, the chances of us being able to succeed in our examinations is drastically reduced. You can understand that.
Absolutely, absolutely. But then unfortunately is that there's nothing much that can be done to sort of salvage the situation, because again, we do not want to see a case of the disruption going all the way to 2023, because 2023 is when we, you know, we expect to see the education calendar now, you know, going back to normal. But then again, there's also that question of exams. You know, very few months from here, of course, there will be, you know, examinations, and it's not just one. It's what we have, the KCPE, the KCSE, and we also have the grade 6. It's a lot. But for the parents, I want to hear from you this morning. How again have you been impacted by, you know, all these disruptions? Feel free to interact with us. Either give us a call or interact with us on our social media platforms. We'll be back very shortly, and of course, we'll be sampling your feedback as well as get more from my guest, that is Dr. Evelyn Jepkemei. But before that, let's take a break. See you shortly.
Thank you. when I feel like losing, you always give me strength. Your strength.
Generation 3 is fun,
Godfather, man OG. Sweet Charlie.
interesting,
Smelly shoes and socks. Socks smells shock sisters.
educative,
My enemies make up for my fault, but I don't care what I see it all.
and awesome.
Not a moment out of place until the letter came.
Martha.
Remember, it's Generation 3 every Saturday from 10 in the morning. Only on NTV.
This week on Property Focus, we're looking at steams and saunas. I can't even stay for this promo for too long because it's really chilly today, so I'm jumping into the steam. But catch me this Sunday at 5:30 p.m. on Property Focus.
Jina langu ni Bire the Vocalist, na kupata wimbo huu kama sikiza tune yako ni jambo rahisi sana. Bonyeza *812 *802# na Mungu atawabariki. Skiza na Nation, supporting local talent.
Yo, what's up, This Friday, we've got a date together. It's all about the trend, Soro.
It's an Index Finger Friday.
We cannot wait to entertain you on Friday. We've got some big guests coming through music.
Brand new music.
I got you on Friday, only on the show.
Come on closer, come a little closer, let me tell you.
The Nairobi Hospital Accident and Emergency Center is manned by well-trained doctors and emergency nurses who are focused at saving lives. With a network of labs, you're guaranteed of accurate medical test results. The Nairobi Hospital is a center of renal excellence, providing cutting-edge technology with over 10 dialysis machines.
Okay, we're back. Of course, the conversation continues even during the break. And of course, it's all about back to school and again, the confusion that has been brought about. But we're here, all right? And of course, the big question is then, how do we make up for the lost time, for the disruptions, just to make sure that then, we know our learners are ready, and especially those ones who will be taking the exams. That is the KCPE, KCSE, and of course, not forgetting the grade 6 learners who will be taking, the Kenya Primary School Education Assessment. Okay, of course, we also need to consider them as well. And of course, Dr. Evelyn, again, the question will be then, here we are, right? All these disruptions, and it's been what, like 2 years of total disruption in the education calendar. So of course, the learners will be affected in one way or the other. But now, we're seeing the parents who say, you know what, I mean, because in the next few weeks, they would need to go back home, right? So some parents are like, no, let's not close schools. Let's just keep them in. But there's also that question of the resources, in schools. Do they have enough resources to continue keeping these learners in schools? But at the same time, does it mean that then the learners will have longer periods of learning just to make sure that they catch up with time?
Yeah, you know, it's very important to protect instructional time for the learners. And I wish that every opportunity is taken to do that, to do exactly that. We have lost a bit of instructional time this season of elections.
Yeah.
And quite obviously, I haven't heard anything from the Ministry of Education whether we will close or not.
Or not, yeah.
But my personal opinion would be, let's not close schools. Let's let the kids just finish the term, and then we move on to the next term, so that we are able to recover a little bit of the time that we have already lost.
Yeah, I think we had one of the teachers said, I mean, this period it took much longer as compared to the holiday that was supposed to get.
Because remember, the Minister for Education had actually said kids would go back to school the following Monday after the election. But you know, the circumstances and you know, all of us Kenyans, we didn't know when the results will be out, and so
I mean, even right now, there are not so many people who are back to work, back to the streets, back to, because again of the uncertainty.
There is still uncertainty to some extent about the results, and we don't know what will happen after the Supreme Court makes its decision. So we are not certain of the future. But I think we can plan. We can create scenarios of if A happens, then we will do B. Yeah, I think the if therefore scenarios can really help to not to just have one idea that schools will close and they will close and we won't do anything else. I think it is important to say, if the Supreme Court makes its decision and A happens, then we will do B, and so on and so forth.
Sort of create a scenario just in case this happens, so that we have like some bit of structure, because already the learners have been disrupted enough, and we can't have more on the same. But then again, we also had the CS say, you know what, it doesn't matter, and especially for the counties who will be going back to the polls. Kakamega, we have Mombasa, and we also have like parts of West Pokot, you know, who will be going back to the polls. And the CS says, it doesn't matter, you know, the learners will still be in school. We'll find a way that IEBC does not interfere with. Again, do you see this happening? Do you see this sort of like working out?
Yeah, I think it works out. Actually, if it wasn't for the fact that we have a history with elections, schools would have continued even with during the elections. But we have a history, so you can't blame anybody for saying, you know, let our children come home, stay with us. In other countries, election happens and people just go, they, you know,
cast your ballot,
your vote, and then you simply go back to work. And I wish for that day, that you know, that even if we have to close school, let it be on the election day to allow for, you know, the many lines of people who will come and cast the vote in schools. And you know, for the most part, it is actually primary schools that are used as the polling stations. The secondary schools, not so much. And therefore, my thinking is that even if in Mombasa, in Kakamega, and in West Pokot and some other areas, even if you, I think schools should not close. I think schools should continue, but we need to create more, you know, make sure that the security of the children is guaranteed. Ensure that, and Wananchi this time voted without any fracas. If they did that, if they did that during the, you know, the big election, I think the by-elections would also reflect what we have already seen. And therefore, I want to believe that it's possible.
But now, how will that happen? Because number one, there's the streams, right? They divide again according to the names. So you find that there's so many streams, right? And it's a lot of people who will be going to
the school.
Yes, to the school. So then, and of course, this in itself will create that disruption. So then, what happens? Do we just designate one school? But you see, that will be unfair for that school, because where will the learners go? There's an issue of capacity. I mean, most of these schools are full. So really, we can't say we will merge a class,
grade 1 and 2.
You know, and 2 together. You know, there's that aspect. So that do we take this to polling stations? People, I mean, police stations. People go vote at police stations.
You know what? I think it would be up to it would be up to the county security team to actually make a decision like that. If you ask me, churches are there. And other social institutions. Why not take this? You know, why not take these polling centers to those particular institutions so that we are not disrupting education again.
All right.
If I were to advise, that would be my advice. Go to other social institutions within, within the vicinity that, that are not being used. Churches would be a very good, example. In
Absolutely, absolutely. So that again, we make up for the lost time. But then again, so for the teachers, what task do you foresee? I mean, because again, like we said, that one teacher who says, listen, we have very few months, before, and we need to have finished the syllabus by November. But now here we are, and in the event then the learners go back home when they close schools and then come back to school, of course there's a bit of lost time. So then what do you foresee in terms of the amount of work for the teachers and also the amount of learning for the learners?
To be honest, I think at this point in time, the Kenyan teacher is the most overworked human being on earth, if you ask me. Because, teachers are not just looking at the subjects, they are looking at the well-being of the child.
That's true.
And for the most part, this season teachers will be focusing on ensuring that kids are stabilizing in class. From a pedagogical point of view, I would say that it is important to cover the entire syllabus.
All right.
But the syllabus is also a living document that you don't have to robotically, tick the boxes and say, okay, we have covered
we have
ABCD.
covered this, we have covered that.
At this point in time, in an examination class, there is no topic that will be examined that has not been dealt with before. And KICD will tell you that the syllabus is actually spiral in the manner in which it has been created. So every topic has been covered to a lesser extent in the lower classes, moving on to the higher classes, and complexity increases as they move along. So my point is this, that teachers should not just rush to complete the syllabus because there is a syllabus to be completed. Because if the learner's emotional state does not allow them to, to absorb this new information, then, there is nothing that we are doing. I would rather that we focus more on helping the learners prepare psychologically for the exam rather than run to ensure. Of course, instruction is important, and I have said that we need to protect instructional time. But I think even for me, as I go back to work, there is a way in which I'm trying to help myself to adapt to going back to work after this disruption. It's the same thing for kids, and so let's try to distress the schooling environment so that kids are not too stressed. This thing of waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning for kids, no, please.
Don't subject them to the same. But then again, I mean, I remember when I was in school and when it was almost about exam time, and you have not completed the syllabus, the panic.
I know.
The panic, because you're like, na exam ikisetiwa huko mahali hatujasoma, what's going to happen?
And I think that is what the teachers need to understand, so they can pass that same information to their learners. If you look at all the topics, and the National Exam Council usually has a guideline for examinations. If you look at it, I am telling you, these few weeks that we have, it will not add much in terms of what the learner already knows and what they can already tackle during the exam. And that is the thing, the assurance that teachers need to give to their learners. But do the teachers themselves have that assurance? That is the question that I'm asking myself. Do they have the assurance that even now, if we were to examine those learners, they are well prepared, they've been there for 8 years, they've been there for 6 years. These few weeks will not make such a much difference, except when kids are stressed and fall into depression, it will make a difference. It won't matter how much time we have spent in teaching content, because their emotional state is not aligned. So
then what do you advise? Because like you're saying, stressing them, wake up at 3 a.m. If you're waking up at 4, now you start waking up at 3 a.m. and then you go all the way until 7 p.m., 8 p.m. just to make up for the lost time. That will not work much. If anything, it will stress the learners even more. So then what do you advise? Focus more on revisions, past papers? What's going to happen?
Focus more on revision, create scenarios for the learners, in revising, help them look at, past papers, and create an environment where they are able to relax. When they relax, they remember better, they learn better, and really we must focus on science, because the brain of these preteens, teens and preteens, this is the time when their brains are growing and they need a lot of sleep. I don't know, you know, if you are a parent, you know that teenagers and their sleep are, you know,
Do
inseparable.
not mess with my sleep.
And
yes.
it is a scientific thing. It is because they need that sleep, because that is the time when their brain is growing.
Yes.
But when we begin to disrupt that sleep, we are stopping their growth at that point. And that is why you have all this emotional discipline problems that we are having, because, you know, there is nowhere to vent this stress that the kids are experiencing. So I think it is important to balance. I'm not saying that we completely forget about covering the syllabus. It is important to do in as far as it is effective, but it's important now to, you know, take this time to reassure the learners that they will do well, that what they already have learned is sufficient for them to be able to do well.
Absolutely. So then again, time. I could see we literally have 2 minutes to go. And like you said earlier on, which I think it's a very interesting statement that you began with, that again, education in this country is more of a reflection, you know. So then what would you say we have learned over this 2-year period of disruptions, and even now with elections, because again, 5 years later, we'll still have elections, right? So then what is it that we have learned? COVID-19 and then the elections and all these disruptions that then we need to start thinking about. And again, to the not health ministry, to the education ministry, in terms of just making sure that we have structure. Is it time that we change completely our education system, or what exactly happens?
The education system is already changing under CBC.
Under the CBC, yes, but now have like more.
I think a deeper conversation that we need to have at the policy level is how do we inbuild resilience? For the system and even for families. How do we, obviously, you know, emergencies will always happen. But, and for the things that are predictable like elections, really we need to plan ahead of time. We shouldn't be doing last minute things. But for things that happen like COVID, I think it is important to build a measure of resilience into the education system. For example, if we were to close school today because of an emergency, have we learned something from 2020? Is it have we improved the distance learning capability that we have, for example? Because if we had, even over the period of these elections, when children were home, instead of them watching politicians, they could have been continuing with their learning. But we went through the COVID period. We saw the challenges that we had. We realized that some people were able to actually continue education in Zoom, but others were not even able to access a radio. That is the disparities that are there within this country. And so at the high level, it's important to build in equity and resilience into the education system.
Absolutely.
So that every child, whatever happens, whether it is drought, whether it is a pandemic or elections, children can be able to continue their education in one form or another.
Absolutely. Dr. Evelyn Jepkemei, education expert, thank you so much for coming by today. This morning, it's a lot that is happening in the education sector, but like you said, again, they're in school. So then what happens? Try as much as possible and make time, but not stress the learners too much, because again, that will not be helping them in one way or the other, especially those ones who, again, are to sit for their exams, and that is the KCSE, KCPE, as well as the grade 6. So we say thank you so much for staying with us this morning, and thank you as well for coming by, really giving us all this insights for the parents. I'm sure you've picked a thing or two from the conversation, as well as the teachers and the schools in general. So my name is Winnie Lubembe. God bless. Have yourselves a good one. I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. But until then, like we always say, remember to stay safe and exercise patience, empathy, and kindness to one another. Goodbye for now.